Rosalie, would you like to go ahead?
All right, let's try Alex then.
Sure. I just have actually a question. I'm worried this is the wrong PowerPoint.
Oh, this is our NOFA introduction.
Okay.
We go through this and then you can do your own introductions.
Yeah, I think you should go through this first and then we'll do our introductions because we have an introduction slide in our.
Perfect, that makes sense then. Okay, before we jump in, I have just a few details to review with you. We have our land acknowledgement, and as we work to heal the destruction caused by colonization, we appreciate your support, solidarity, and continued learning. Please recognize whose land you're attending from and add this into the chat. Racial equity in the food system. We encourage you to join our caucus groups on Saturday, July 29th from 12:45 to 1:45 p.m. We'll have a BIPOC caucus and a white ally caucus in Sheehan Hall. With Wayne Vivier as our theme, we aim to bring light to the ancestral wisdoms of indigenous peoples of the global south, including the Aymara, Quechua, and Machipi people. We celebrate that restorative agriculture is rooted in longstanding cultural practices of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. In an agricultural system built on stolen land and the forced labor and exploitation of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, our conference aims to center equity in our food system. At NOFA, we encourage you to center racial equity in your daily life and in your own community. Please think about some groups in your area that can help support racial equity and feel free to drop any ideas into the chat. We have some on this slide that are some organizations in our area that are supportive of racial equity in our communities. We want to express a sincere thanks to our partner level sponsor, Stonyfield Organic, and a number of other sponsors who helped make our conference possible. We encourage you to purchase from them and support our conference. When you do, please let them know that you appreciate their support of nofamass. We also want to thank our supporter level sponsors. And we're excited to share that we'll be doing soil microbial evaluations at the in-person conference on Saturday. This is super exciting. We have a huge team of soil health technicians who are psyched to look at your soil and provide you with technical assistance and recommendations. Please bring in a small soil sample from home and visit the soil health table on Saturday. Last but not least, we have the NOFA summer auction. If you have your smartphone handy, you can scan the QR code or you can click on the link that's being dropped into the chat. The auction is entirely online and we have some incredible items to bid on. All right, and at this point, we'll turn it over to Leslie, Rosa, and Alexandria. Okay. And just let me know when you'd like to advance slides and I can go ahead.
This is Leslie. Thanks so much for joining us,
Leslie,
to our presentation about cultivating well-being on farms in the Northeast, or estar en las granjas del noroeste. Before we get started, Alex, do you want to start?
Sure, Leslie. Thank you. There was some issues with your audio, but you sounded good at the end, so hopefully it's cleared up. But yes, I'll just jump in. Hi, my name is Alexandria Ward. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm calling from Pawtucket and Massachusetts land in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I work with FarmAid. I'm the Farmer Services Network Manager, and I'm a part of the Cultivemos network. And I'll pass it back to Leslie to introduce herself. Oh, and you can, I believe, move to the next slide, please. Thank you.
This is Leslie Rodriguez. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'm going to have to keep my camera off for sakes of being able to be understood. I apologize. So I'm Leslie Rodriguez. I use she and ella pronouns. I am the Cultivemos Associate Director with the National Young Farmers Coalition. I am currently calling from Kingston, New York, on Monte Lenape land. I'm typically calling from Del Mar, Maryland, where my home is, but I'm on the road. Del Mar, Maryland is the land of the Nantengo people. And I'm with the National Young Farmers Coalition, and it's so great to be here today. I did want to give a content warning before we started that some of the topics that we'll be discussing today are very sensitive. So I want everyone to be taking care of themselves and step away as needed, and engage as much as you want or as little as you can. So I appreciate having us here. I'll try to pass the mic over to Rosa to do a quick introduction.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes a todos. My name is Rosa Rodriguez. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I am calling from Wakabanki land in Vermont. But I usually call from Nantengo land in Del Mar, Maryland. It just happened that I'm in Vermont today, having some technical difficulties here, but I'm here with you. And I am the network service coordinator with the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust, best known as NEFOC. And so I thank you all for being here. And I'm glad we can spend this time together.
This is Leslie. Thanks so much, Rosa. You're breaking up a little bit there, but we did get everything.
Leslie, now pass the mic back to you.
This is Leslie. Can you hear me? Awesome. Thank you. Can we go to the next slide, please? Awesome. So we are with Cultivemos. Cultivemos is a network of service providers that come together in order to advance the awareness and resources of mental health amongst farmers and farm workers in the Northeast. And we particularly work with Latinx, BIPOC, queer young farmers and farm workers in the Northeast. So our mission is to build an inclusive network of service providers dedicated to advancing the mental health, emotional, social, and financial well-being of agricultural producers, workers, and their families. Ax, do you want to read the vision?
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. We envision a future where diverse farming and ranching communities in the Northeast are seamlessly connected to accessible, culturally competent, timely, and effective mental behavioral health care and stress assistance programs. Like Leslie said, this is the mission and vision of the Cultivemos network.
This is Leslie. So within Cultivemos, we are trying to bring awareness of this topic that has stigma with it. And so it's very hard to talk about. And we'd love to have an engaging session to talk just about that, about mental health awareness, mental health issues that farmers and farm workers face. But let's be honest, y'all are the experts. So we want to have a very interactive conversation where we can ask you about your experiences and then provide some resources that could potentially help. But for that, we need to create a safe space. So let's talk about our Cultivemos community agreements and how to interact safely in this space. Can we go to the next slide? This one. Rosa, you want to try to jump in?
Yes, thank you, Leslie. So let's talk about the Cultivemos agreement and how to interact safety in this space, like Leslie just mentioned. And so we're going to go over some of the agreement here. Number one is take care of our needs. So the idea is that we take care, we will do what we need to do to take care of ourselves during our time together, so that we can contribute fully. And so we should be stepping away, taking breaks when we need to, and are setting some healthy boundaries. And that's number one. Number two will be consider ways to create accessible meeting space. And number three is ways
Rosa, this is Leslie. You're cutting out there. I can take it from here if that's okay.
WAIT. Why am I talking? It is a collective responsibility to actively make room for everyone to speak. For those of us who
Rosa, this is Leslie. I'll take it from here. Can you hear me well? Can I get a thumbs? Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. So I'll continue on. Sorry about that. Gotta love technology, y'all. So number three is wait, why am I talking? So this means that everyone is responsible to actively make room for everyone to speak and contribute. So those of us that tend to speak more will be responsible for stepping back, and those of us who tend to stay quiet will challenge ourselves to speak up a little more. And number four is succinct statements are encouraged. Alex, do you want to do number five?
Absolutely. Thank you, Leslie, and thank you, Rosa. So number five, we are all experts. We recognize that everyone has their own experience, whether that's educational, professional, and lived experience. And nobody is an expert in everything, but everyone has their own area of expertise, and we can all learn from each other. Number six, use I statements. Number seven, people learn differently. Number eight, accountability matters. So we strive to create an environment that feels safe for all, and that we recognize that it might be unreasonable to expect that everyone will feel safe raising certain concerns. But we will address the impact of our words and actions to create accountability regardless of intention. I'll pass it back to you, Leslie.
This is Leslie. Can you hear me? Awesome. Thank you. So number 9 is accept and expect non-disclosure. Number 10 is if we wonder, we ask. So we strive to create a culture that values asking questions and making space to clarify things when things are unclear. So in this space, we will ask questions to clarify meaning, and if we're unsure, we will provide clarity. Number 11, wait, did I skip one? No, number 11 is confidentiality, the most important one, I think, in this type of space. So we'll respect each other and not speak without explicit permission, and we'll keep private communications private unless given permission. So whatever we share in this space can stay in this space. Anybody have any questions about our community agreements before we get started, and our content warnings at the beginning with sensitive topics arising for those of us that joined a little later? Cool. This is Leslie again. Can we switch to the next slide, please? So with that, let's get started with those agreements in mind. So let's make this interactive. Please come off mute as you please, or jump into the chat and I'll read them aloud. So tell us about some of the stressors that you're experiencing. Y'all are the experts and y'all are living your own lives. So I'm curious what sort of stressors folks here are experiencing.
Weather, for sure. Weather sometimes a lot this season.
Thanks, Emma. That's definitely one that we can all relate to.
I know I'm having a stressor of just not having enough time to do everything that needs to be done right now.
I can definitely relate to that. Thank you, Christine.
I will say that I have kind of different types of stressors where I have made the more day-to-day things of trying to get kids to school, get work done, earn money and stuff, but I always have this deep stressor of awareness of climate change that feels like it's always in the background, and sometimes I'm just trying to like push it away a little bit so I can take care of my day-to-day activities, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Matthew. That definitely makes sense. I can definitely relate to that. It's funny because Alex and I tend to have these conversations a lot in our work as a service provider that works sort of on a different level, not so close to farmers and farm workers and to the communities that I want to serve. I get really stressed out of not being able to help everybody, and that really affects me, and that keeps me up at night. And so finding distinct ways to try to combat that, but that's definitely something that keeps me up at night.
Yeah, definitely. Me too, Leslie. Farm Aid has a farmer hotline, which we'll talk about later. And I'm one of the people that answers the phone. And so we hear a lot from farmers about what they're experiencing. And Farm Aid also does some disaster response and the, sudden changes in climate that have been severely impacting farms. Like the rain, the flooding that's just recently been going on, of course, in the Northeast. It sounds silly. It stresses me out too, because it's my job to try to help alleviate some of the impacts of these ever increasing severe climate events. So I hear you, Matthew, as well.
Yeah, I joined a little bit late, so I should say I'm a technical service provider and not a farmer. So I do work directly with farmers, but I'm also somewhat new to my role and still kind of feel like I'm being onboarded and trained for my role as a technical service provider. And then with the recent flooding, it feels like everything just shifted to a point where it's like felt kind of silly to go out and ask people if they know about no-till agriculture when like their fields are drowning.
Right. Yeah. That's a tricky thing to navigate if that's your job, to inform people about those kinds of technical assistance pieces. we could move to the next question. I'll say the questions we're asking here are, well, our goal is to encourage a conversation like what we're having right now, because we work, as Leslie has said, with Cultivemos. The goal is to try to support farmers and farm workers with mental health, and mental health is connected to a lot of other, there's a lot of stressors, bless you, like finance and weather, just to name two, I mean, really obvious ones. But we wanted to encourage conversation because all too often people don't talk about these sorts of things, especially farmers often have a tendency, there can be stigma around these kinds of conversations in rural areas. Though there have been some incredible farming communities that come together to specifically support and have these type of conversations, which is awesome. But the purpose of these questions is not just to have a conversation here, it's also to encourage people to think within their, you know, within their own lives and their own communities, and maybe with the farmers you work for. Like when I read these and I think about the conversations I have on the hotline, I'm listening to hear what the stressors the farmers are facing, even if that's not how they're wording the issue. And you, like Matthew, as a service provider, obviously, even if you're talking to someone about no-till agriculture, you can still listen to hear, is the person I'm speaking to stressed? Are they perhaps dealing with some heavy stuff in their lives? And is there what resources do I know of that I could connect them with? So there's definitely that. So some symptoms of stress could be like, or if anyone wants to share, but for example, for me, I know I get a lot of tension in my shoulders and my neck, for example. Does anyone have any other classic like symptoms they notice when they get really stressed out that come up for them?
I know I clench my teeth, just like that.
Yeah.
I can share again if nobody else wants to at the moment. So I grew up farming and got a back injury when I was a teenager and have suffered kind of a chronic pain since then. And so I grew up doing physical labor and I can no longer engage with it. So it kind of changed a little bit, like career path sort of things. And so that's the chronic pain can like create stress, but that also like exacerbates physical discomfort as well. I feel like through that process, there's been some blessings, but I feel like I've become incredibly attuned to listening to my body and its symptoms. And sometimes when I experience that stress, I often feel it in my body first, sometimes before mentally. And for me, I can feel it a lot in like my chest, like tension around my heart area, like anxiety feelings are like pretty palpable. And it's also something that I've learned to like not show. And so it makes me just aware that there's like, I'm somebody that you wouldn't, if I was walking on the street, you wouldn't think I had any physical disability sort of thing, but like I do carry it with me, but I've gotten like really good at disguising it too. And so I'd always kind of keep that in mind if anybody, I'm just kind of like, if I'm trying to stay attuned to other people's like emotional behavior and just think like, oh, maybe there's something deep down inside that that I can't see physically, or like there's some other problem. I guess that doesn't really totally, that's kind of a little bit of a wandering tangent of thoughts, but I started talking before I had a coherent thought.
Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
I feel stress a lot in my body first, and then in my mind, sometimes I'm just like, oh, I'm probably stressed because this thing happened a half hour ago and I'm still feeling that sort of situation. And something we really emphasize with children too is like, if you have like heightened emotions, just being like, what is your body feeling now? And I think we've been like teaching that for a bit, and I've started to tune into it more and more.
No, that's awesome. You're highlighting some really good points. And I think that can be hard for a lot of people, myself included, to have the level of awareness of noticing it happening. Noticing it happening before you're overwhelmed by it is definitely a skill, a muscle that can be hard to even locate. So thanks for bringing that up.
Oh,
Dan?
I forgot to say, sorry, real quickly.
Yeah.
One of the major symptoms is just feeling irritable and sometimes acting irritably. when
Oh,
I'm stressed,
absolutely.
particularly if I'm experiencing physical stress. And then like I'll have to follow up with somebody being like, sorry, my back really hurts. I apologize for that.
Definitely. Thank you. Dan, I see your hand up.
You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I don't want to speak for another person, but I'm a kind of a CSA ambassador for a farm I worked at last year, and I'm still connected with. I help kind of the vision work with the farm, and it's woman run, 11 generations on the land, and a lot of pride there. But you know, she doesn't have a field manager. She lost 2 more key staff this year. The CSA membership was down. And, you know, the opposite is when everything's working fairly well. And on a farm, that's not always the case. It's kind of like, you know, good weather on top of Mount Washington. But you can see it's like a Broadway show with her. She is just like moving and dancing and engaged and happy with people and talking. And then when things go bad, it's like she can't really have that, you know, her face changes and you can see the stress. It's literally right on her body, right on her face. And, you know, I have different stress kind of vision stuff too with the food system, but, you know, it's hard because farmers don't always see the public. The ones that have farm stands and CSAs do. So it's almost like another role for her. And it's hard to put on that happy face all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Dan.
You're welcome.
This is Leslie. Sometimes it's really hard to hide my stress because when I get stressed out, I get hives all over my body, all over my face, especially when I don't want it to show. So that's something that I've been dealing with. And it's interesting, you know, that Matthew brings up this teaching with the children now, becoming a full-time parent and thinking about how do I teach my little one about their emotions and about their stressors. And it feels very like first grade to like do and practice what I'm asking him to do and practice. And it's like we as adults feel like we're so adult that we don't need to go back to the step, but it is sort of like, okay, Leslie, take a few deep breaths. What am I feeling? What's going on? And this is not, you know, something that I can do intuitively, something I have to think about and something that I have to teach him to think about so that hopefully we surpass these issues in his adulthood. So I think that's something really interesting with stress is like we've got to look at it like we're children again.
That's a really good point. I also think it's interesting how we're highlighting how it can be sometimes, I don't know, easier to see things in other people and maybe sometimes harder to see them in ourselves. That's not true for everybody, but I think it's true for some. So when the next question is who or what helps you combat your stressors, which I think is a natural continuation of the conversation we've been having, where we've been talking about children or farmers in our lives. So I'm just curious to hear about who or what helps you when you notice those stress symptoms coming up, if you have an approach. Oh, and thanks for the additional comment in the chat, Matthew. Yeah. I'll just say one thing I do is this is like cliche almost, but I run a lot. I try to have like a practice of running. And that really helps clear my head at the end of the day and lift some of the weight that sort of builds up throughout the day. It doesn't like, yeah, anyway, that really helps. It's kind of like a maintenance thing, I feel like, for me. Yeah.
For me, the number one has always been music since I was young and to this day. And that's playing music, listening to music, and especially dancing to music.
Yeah, definitely.
Alexandria, I think it's really funny you mentioned running because I was about to say the same thing. And that's actually just how I usually run in the morning. And so like, that's how anything that I've internalized and like as a stress builds overnight, because I've realized that especially like when it's late, I'm tired, like, and that's when I start, like the stress just compounds itself. And then in the morning, I'm usually able to like go for a run and just like process everything. Like that's how it all comes together for me.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have an ice cream truck going down the street if you hear music. But then I think also like calm things help me a lot too, like sitting and knitting, for instance, where I can just like be quiet and kind of have my own thoughts in a way. And then also kind of like talking through things, even if I don't have an answer or response as a result, it's kind of the process of articulating like the concerns that are going through my head to be able to think about how to address them. And then also like if I'm totally like overwhelmed, making lists of like what's stressing me out and what do I need to do in order to make them not so stressful anymore.
I love this. I love it.
And I'll second Matthew's comment about being in nature and camping and hiking too.
Mm-hmm. Pets too, Dan. Pets are great. And tacos.
And
I also yeah.
He's a good addiction for sure.
Was that you, Emma?
Yeah, I was just seconding Leslie's ice cream.
Oh, yes. Was someone about to say something? 'Cause I was...
This is Leslie. I was just gonna add that in my culture, growing up, coffee was always something too that sort of soothes me, like the warmth of it, I think. And I've been trying to figure out how to do decaf coffee at night right before bed or tea or something. But I think it's the warmth of it and something that like brings me back to my culture and my youth. That sort of like calms me down and centers me a little bit.
Nice.
Leslie, do you ever try like herbal tea? Because I usually have tea after dinner for that same reason. Like I'll just have tea and like tell my body, okay, it's time to wind down now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have this type of some mushroom herbal tea, but it's supposed to be like fake coffee. I think it has like chicory and dandelion root, so it has like a really deep, rich flavor to it.
That sounds
It
good.
can be pretty, yeah, it can be pretty nice. Not the same as coffee. I love coffee, so I drink coffee in the morning, but I can't really drink coffee in the afternoon or evening, so I feel you.
Yeah. We should try that out.
Yeah, Matthew, can you put that name in the chat, please? Christine, what sort of herbal teas are we talking?
I usually like to do one with lavender. I have like a lavender mint combination. I know that mint can be stimulating, but the lavender is calming, I find, for me. And I'm not a big fan of chamomile, but sometimes I get like a chamomile blend. But again, I think really anything, I agree with you about like the warmth, like even with it being just blazing hot outside, it's still kind of like, the warmth and the comfort of it too.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I see Rosa in the chat with the yoga. Thanks for putting that herbal tea, Matthew. I appreciate that. And Rosa loves lavender as well.
I'd like to add that I recently through a grant that was, I think, won by or awarded to somebody by the state of New Hampshire. I'm not sure actually where it came from, but I benefited from some sort of grant money that gave free therapy to farmers. So I got like 12 paid for sessions of therapy through this grant. And yeah, so it was like a really good example, I think, maybe of what some of the programs that you are a part of is, yeah, just like real, like tangible aid.
I love that you brought that up, Emma, and I'm really glad to hear that you benefited from, that was Emma, right? Sorry, I hope so. I'm glad to hear that you benefited from that program. One thing that we've been sort of tracking at FarmAid and through with Cultivemos is these, we call them voucher programs, but that's not a good name for them. They're these state by state therapy sessions that are free for farmers. They're different in every single state, and not every state has them, but a lot of states used some grant, some Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network grant, State Department of Agriculture grant funding in 2021. To fund these kinds of programs. And some states like Vermont have had these kinds of programs for many years. And they, like I said, they look different in every state. So we've been trying to understand more broadly what they look like so we can refer farmers appropriately. And it's really good to hear that you benefited from the one in New Hampshire. We're trying to find ways to keep those going. So we wanted to also aromatherapy and breathing exercises. I see Dan put in the chat. That's, yeah, I do box breathing a lot in particular. I wanted to move forward, if that's okay with Leslie and Rosa, to the next slide. Not to, yeah. So what we're moving towards is tangible actions. We're talking about what does stress look like in our bodies and in our minds? What do we already do? And having this conversation helps to make these things a little more, increase awareness of these things. So we wanted to talk about what we can do when we're feeling stressed or just in general. Leslie, do you want to talk about that, or?
This is Leslie. If you can hear me well, I'll go for it. Yay.
Perfectly.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, so now that we've stressed you all out by making you tell us about your stressors, let's bring it back home and let's think about like what we can do for ourselves and for others. And like Alex said earlier, it's really easy for us to point out in others. So if it's helpful to think about yourself as a third person that you need to take care of, then I encourage you to do that in this session. So what can we do? We can be compassionate with ourselves and others. We can create self-care plans. And sometimes our self-care plan will fail. So maybe we need to make a time for crisis. And always, always, always reaching out to a friend or a family member and having some folks on deck that you can call in case of an emergency. I think that we hope for the best and we prepare for the worst. So in this case, I would really want to encourage all of us to do a self-care plan. And something that we use in my community is called snacks, meals, and buffets. Can we go to the next slide, please? So these pictures are not mine, but as I was doing some research, they popped up and they were beautifully made already. So I thought they'd be helpful for us to think of snacks, meals, and buffets. So the difference is snacks would be something that you can do in 5 to 10 minutes. It won't take you out of your routine. So something that you're stressed out in the moment, and that wouldn't take you out of your routine. For instance, grabbing a cup of coffee or some tea, breathing exercise, stretching, yoga, meditation. While a meal is something that could take from 30 minutes to like half a day. So like going for a run, that could take an hour, riding your bike, taking a long walk or hike, going fishing, calling a friend, or planning a vacation or a buffet. And so a buffet is something that would take more than a whole day or more. And it would take you completely out of your routine, completely out of your crisis, completely out of your situation. And it's something that we sign up for long term. So maybe something like membership to a yoga studio, or something like going camping for the weekend, taking a vacation, a road trip. So these are some of the things and the ways that we can break it up. So I encourage us all to take out a pen and paper. We're going old school. Or, open up a Word document in your computer. Or like me, I have a Notes doc app in my phone, and that's where I keep my snacks, meals, and buffets list. This list on this talks about painting your nails. I'm a nail girl. So doing my nails is something that I love to do. And so that would be a lovely snack for me. Another one on here might be put on your favorite outfit. So what are some snacks that we can write down, and maybe we can encourage each other? Anybody have any ideas of a snack, something that you could do in 5 to 10 minutes that wouldn't take you out of your routine, that could help in a stressful moment?
I like to stretch, even if it's like I have 1 minute between meetings, just doing a little stretching and feeling my body is a nice snack.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, Nelly, woo! I like to dance. So dancing a salsa or a merengue song, which take about 5 minutes, will be a lovely snack for me.
Mm.
I know for me, like taking a walk or talking to a friend, also like watering plants or just doing something to kind of change your scenery. I feel like for watering plants, it's kind of like, I feel like it's an easy way to help something else, and then I can like focus my attention on that, and they don't talk back, and it's generally not problematic, and that's always enjoyable.
Generally being the keyword then. No, I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, that's a good one. And I see Dan in the chat, fill the bird feeders. Yes, definitely. That relieves some stress. Anybody else have ideas? Putting up a face mask? What else y'all got?
Apparently this is not popular, but sometimes when I have like 5 minutes between meetings, I lie down and I close my eyes. I don't go to sleep, but I lay down, sometimes on the floor, sometimes just on like a couch if it's available. I don't know, I thought everybody did this, but it turns out they don't.
I'm with you on laying down for sure. I do that too. And I feel like it's good to lift your arms up, because I feel like sometimes when I get anxious, I get like tight, like and curled. So when you lay down, you get to like open yourself up in a nice way. Yeah.
Well, this is awesome. So if we move to the next slide, we have a template. No, it's not a sort of a template. It is a template. I think Leslie might be having some technical difficulties. But
Can you hear me?
yes,
Oh, okay, awesome. Thanks, Alex.
yeah. Were you
I
trying to
appreciate
stop mute on or something?
Yeah, no, I was just, it was cutting out a little bit again because technology loves me today. Yeah, so I just I want to just encourage everybody to write down your meals and your snacks and your buffets, and have a planned out. And so an alternative to that would be this slide with a more in-depth self-care plan. And this could go a little bit deeper depending on your preferences, and it might fit your lifestyle a little better. But like
Oh no, now you're cutting out.
community and peers to peer is been seen and proven that is the best way to deal with stressors that we face, especially as farmers and farm workers, especially as marginalized communities, within the queer communities, within the Latinx communities, within the BIPOC communities, especially. So I encourage us all to sort of bring this back to our communities, and think about helping ourselves and our fellows out there. Alex, you want to talk a little bit about the resources that FarmAid brings along?
Absolutely. Thanks, Leslie. I also just wanted to highlight one thing. It's that doing this activity, building out a self-care plan, talking about this stuff, it feels easy when you're feeling good. But when you're not feeling so good, it's harder to remember what it's like to feel good, right? So that's why you do these plans before you're not feeling so good. And you can even talk to friends, share your self-care plan with a friend, and they can share theirs with yours so that you can be better able to support each other. And I always find it really helpful to remember that no feeling lasts forever, even if it feels like it does. And reminding yourself of that can be really powerful. And also this increased awareness of your own mental health can help you identify these kinds of stressors coming up for other people, like what Dan was talking about with the CSA farmer he works with. He can see the stress on her face. So anyway, I know we're running out of time a little bit. We'll move on to, we're not running out of time. We're getting close to the end. So I'll talk about the FarmAid Farmer Hotline that I mentioned earlier. So some of y'all might be familiar. FarmAid, you can call 1-800-FarmAid, and we will, our hotline is open from Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. And we now also have the hotline available in Spanish. The hours are not 8. The hours are, I gotta look that up to fact check it before I say the wrong hours for that, but they're a little shorter, but it's the same phone number. And you can also, if you don't feel comfortable calling, you can also submit an online request for assistance form to us, also available in English and Spanish, and we will email you back. We are a referral line. We're not licensed therapists or counselors, but we are all trained in mental health and various different trainings to support and identify stressors. So what we do is we listen and we talk and we refer. So that's also why the Suicide Prevention Lifeline is on here, because if that's another resource that's now available nationally. Thank you for sharing that, Emma. So yeah, we can move to the next slide. Right, so we also have an online search tool, which is the Farmer Resource Network. So if you just want to find some resources like what Emma just shared, for example, you can use this search tool. It's not just for mental health resources. It's for, as you can see, we have a lots of different search categories, and it's available now in Spanish as well. Just want to highlight regarding Spanish, if you click see this page in Spanish, ver esta página en español, that translates the page into Spanish, but it doesn't mean that all of the resources you're going to get are Spanish first. To see the Spanish first resources, you have to select preferred language, Spanish, and then you'll get the resources that were actually written in Spanish originally, or translated by a person. So yes, we wanted to highlight the search tool, and FarmAid also, of course, recognizes, sorry, Cultivemos recognizes that stress is caused by, farming is stressful, right? There's a reason that we're here today. And there's a lot of reasons outside of everybody's control that makes farming even more stressful. And so you can see these resource categories like land access, disaster relief, marketing assistance, activism and organizing. Like, these are not directly addressing mental health, but they can all be elements of stress. All right, we can go to the next slide. Wasn't sure if Leslie, you wanted to take this, or if Rosa wanted to try.
Yeah, if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Kind of. Keep going.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Alex. So like I tried to say at the beginning, Rosa Rodriguez from the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust, best known as NEFOC. So we support communities, especially if you identify as Black or Indigenous, X, Asian, or another ethnicity of a color. So if you want or need technical assistance, supporting building relationships, supporting building collaborate projects, training and fellowships opportunity, resources, material to improve wellness of farming communities, then you might want to become a member. You will want to become a network member of NEFOC, right? And so you can do this by going to our website at nefoclandtrust.org. And you know, and just become a member. We do provide our services right now in English and Spanish. And there's a lot of support, so feel free to connect. So thank you. Do we have any time for more questions?
Yeah, we have a little bit more time. I think we were scheduled until 6:15.
Great. Yes, so anybody have any question? ¿Alguna pregunta?
And you can ask about anything from what is Cultivemos that y'all keep talking about to tell me again about NEFOC, or yes, Emma?
And yeah, I'm curious about your community agreements and what process was used to write those. And I presume like agree upon them, and what kind of setting that was. Because my organization is actually in the process of kind of reconfiguring some community agreements. So I'm curious.
That's a great question. We did. I'm actually was just asking. Yeah, Leslie, that would be great if you.
This is Leslie. Thanks, Alex. That's a really great question, actually. So we wrote this in the first year of the grant. We wrote this together as an advisory team, sorry. And we've got feedback from our farmer advisory board. And then we sort of all agreed to this. And so as members join Cultivemos, they have to sign or endorse our community agreements along with our racial equity statement. We also have a conflict transformation document and best practices. And so folks that join our network need to agree to those sort of terms and conditions to join. And we sort of have a process to when folks do cause harm, and we have a really excellent conflict transformation team that addresses these harms within our network, which have happened. But yeah, I'm happy to share that along as well, the document, our onboarding document, if that's helpful for you and your organization, Emma.
Yeah, I mean, the process seems kind of similar to mine. What we've come into is like new people come on board, and sometimes a lot of new people at one time. And so then even like the language of community agreement feels challenging for some people, because it's like, I technically didn't agree to this, or I didn't as a community. So I guess something that I think we've thought about is having a period where some sort of like year or every 2 years, we look at it and kind of like re-agree in some sort of meeting or conversation. Has that ever come up for you, that kind of conflict, or not really so far?
This is Leslie. Yeah, definitely. I think since we have each member sign these endorsements or these community agreements once they come on, then we haven't been presented with that exactly. But we do like to go back to our community agreements and revamp them. And even when there is an issue, what we've seen a lot is when a conflict does occur, it'll be about something that wasn't in our community agreements. And once that conflict is resolved, then we'll make an amendment to our community agreements, our racial equity statement, and our conflict transformation document. And so we usually do that about once a year, and it does say that we will review it the fall of every year or something like that.
That's really cool. Yeah, that could be really important. Thanks for sharing that.
Of course. Thank you for asking.
I just wanted to highlight the community agreement number 10 in the spirit of this question session portion of the session, which is, if we wonder, we ask. And I feel like we are all experts also applies, because I don't know, sometimes I get nervous to ask questions I have because I think everybody else already knows the answer, and I should too. And I'm trying to work on that and ask the question anyway, and I found that other people don't always know the answer I thought everybody knew, and they're glad someone asked the question. So no pressure, but if you have a question that you think everybody knows the answer to, feel free to ask it, because they might not. So, and even if they do, you don't know the answer. So I'm thinking of a question like, what is Cultivemos? Which is probably a question I would have if I was listening to this.
Can you tell us more about Cultivemos? Because I would like to know more.
Absolutely, Christine. So Cultivemos is the Northeast region of the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network. Watch how I'll put that, which is the USDA grant that was originally created in the 2018 Farm Bill, and it's a response to the report that indicated there's high levels of farm stress in the United States, and also, frankly, globally. So it's the USDA funding a response to all that farm stress. And there's 4 regions: Northeast, West, South, and North Central. Everybody's got a new name. So Northeast is Cultivemos, for example. The South is Sage. The West is RASAP. North Central, they never did change their name, so they're FRSAN North Central. And they all have a hotline and a database, a searchable database. Farm Aid had a hotline and a database before, and so did some of the other regions, pre-existing hotlines for farmers.
Thank you, because I feel like I've heard of you, but I don't know too much about you. And is it just kind of funded in perpetuity?
The
The Cultivemos
Cultivemos?
and before.
No, it is not. It's a 3-year grant program, and as you know, we're in a farm bill year, so we'll see what happens in the farm bill, actually, if the program is funded again. It seems very likely, but to get into the weeds here, yes, after in 2024, there will be an RFA, and all of the regions will have to submit an application again for the next 3 years. And hopefully we'll see more programs like the one that Emma mentioned in New Hampshire, which I believe the funding is actually run out for that. So that's one thing we've been kind of working on, is trying to find a ways to make programs like that more evergreen rather than dependent upon unreliable funding sources. Not unreliable, I guess, funding sources that have an end date. Thanks for that question.
This is also, I think, one of the interesting things about Cultivemos in the Northeast that we differ from our friends in the other regions. This grant was given to University Extension in the other regions. And in the Northeast, this was given to sort of a team of organizations. So that's why we work together so closely, and we are Cultivemos, National Young Farmers Coalition, our friend Alex from Farm Aid, our friend Rosa from NEFOC. We have also Migrant Clinicians Network, or MCN, Farm First in Vermont. We also have 2 extensions, UMaine Extension and New Delaware Extension. So it's really awesome that we're able to do this in the Northeast, a little bit different with a bunch of nonprofits and some extension universities, and we really tackle systemic issues that cause stress for farmers and farm workers in the Northeast. And we focus particularly, like I said before, on our BIPOC, Latinx, queer, and young farmers and farm workers in the Northeast. So we've been tackling climate change and having big topics. And within Cultivemos, we have cohorts or subgroups, and they come together based on affinity or based on location or based on topic area, and they're able to apply for funds in a re-granting system to make projects within their own communities. So for example, we have a veterans cohort, and they did a really awesome project where they surveyed veteran cohorts to see what the gaps in services were. And so we also have a farm communications cohort that created a really awesome podcast called Cultivating Resilience in the Northeast. If you've heard it, we're on Apple Podcasts and Google. So check that out. It's really cool. I recommend it. And we also had a magazine go out. I think it was the first year of our grants, the second year, apologies. And that was from our Spanish first cohort, La Fuerza Latina. They did a magazine that was completely in Spanish that focused on mental health in the Latinx communities. So they interviewed psychologists and therapists and farmers and farm workers about their experience with stress in the Northeast and in our community. So that was really awesome. It was beautiful. And what was it like? 2,000 copies of that was distributed in the Northeast. So that was really awesome. And it's also online. So we're really lucky that we're able to do this re-granting system and have our own communities provide resources to the communities that they know best. And it sort of gets this task off of the government in some ways and into the hands of people that know how to use the money and know where the needs are. So we're really excited that we're able to do that as Cultivemos. Does that bring up any other questions from folks?
Leslie, thank you so much for sharing that. That sounds really interesting, and Alexandria for putting the links in the chat. This has been fantastic. I don't know if there's anything else you guys wanted to mention, but if there aren't any other questions, then we can begin our wrap up. All right. Well, thank you so much. This was wonderful. I really learned a lot and enjoyed having this interactive conversation and a chance to kind of hear what other people's thoughts and ideas were on this also. I want to give a big thanks to Alexandria, Leslie, and Rosa for everything they've shared. I have a few announcements before we wrap up. Emma's going to put some links in the chat with our evaluation and auction. The evaluation is a valuable way for us to receive feedback on the workshop and the conference. If you please visit the link for the online evaluation, it can help us inform future programming. The auction is an opportunity for you to bid on some of the incredible items that we have. The online auction proceeds support our year-long programming and advocacy work. So if you're able, please bid generously. So thank you all so much. This has been a great workshop and I've really enjoyed it. And with that, we hope you all have a good night and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks for sharing in the conversation and everything.
Gracias a todos.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Take care. Gracias.
Have a good night.
You too. Bye.